Um, Moving on though, listen, the card had other results, right? We woke up at 6 a.m. on Saturday to start a watch along, and frankly, I ain't mad about it, man. The card had a little bit of everything, some controversial judging for sure, as always. Great action, broken bones, maybe an upset or two, and even an inexperienced doctor. Yeah. How many fingers? Go ahead. But anyways, let's talk about the good stuff. Did Ankalaev secure a title shot? Goes.
Yeah, I think he did. The fight before this one, he secured that title shot. Problem is he's not getting it, right? We know how the UFC rolls. It's supposed to be his shot, man. It's the fight that I think a lot of fans want to see. I'll tell you this much though. I think that time that they've kind of given that extra time to Poatan, I really think he's closed the gap a little bit. I used to think it was going to be Ankalaev all day. He's just going to get that takedown and it would be over. Now I'm starting to think it's a little bit closer. I think Poatan's had more time to improve. But yeah, Ankalaev absolutely deserves that shot. It's his shot, and I think it's going to be a great fight.
Danny, he chose not to take the fight to the ground. He stood to prove a point. He beat Aleksandar Rakic, but did he prove the point to all of us who wonder how he would do standing next to Poatan? Poatan's not Aleksandar Rakic. All due respect to the Austrian.
I like that he actually kept this fight standing because he didn't really show his cards as far as like what he has in store for the grappling, or as much, because obviously he has in previous fights. So yeah, I think he's the number one contender, and I always thought he was the biggest threat at 205 for Poatan, and I think he maintained that even though it wasn't the most exciting fight on Saturday. I think he's still the guy, and I'm super intrigued to see how that fight plays out.
Chris goes wild in the chat, says Ankalaev has to be next for Fajeda unless he's super picky about when and where. Joseph Boza says Dana hates Ankalaev with a damn passion. Ank is on a 13-fight unbeaten streak. Mike Bond, our colleague at MMA Junkie, asked Dana about this, and Dana almost said, yeah, like without slam dunking it, he pretty much said, yeah, that's pretty much the next fight. Whereas remember, with Chimaev and Strickland, he did say to Fada Hanoun, get back to me on Tuesday. What would you do, Dan, with Ankalaev, man? Is he next? Did he secure it?
I think so. He was my number one contender and the biggest threat to Poatan before this Saturday. He still is after, but I wasn't blown away by the performance, and I agree with what Goz said, where Poatan's really closed the gap in. And the thing with Ankalaev, he's really inconsistent. It's like part of me is like, oh, did he stand because he got the old Dana and Hunter Campbell less wrestling note, right? Or if you look at his fights, the guy's a really inconsistent wrestler. He doesn't go to it as much as he should. It's been a big argument for guys like me who watched him on the ACA Russian scene, where he showed this devastating ground and pound out there, and he never really showed it in the UFC. So it's been really hair pulling for us analysts that have been following this guy. So I don't know how consistent he's going to be. And when he does go for takedowns, guys, it's in the clinch, and that's going to be the hardest place to take Poatan down.
Good stuff. All right. Hey, real quick, guys, another big fight that happened, Lerone Murphy against Dan Ige, settled in the third round, went to a decision, but the decision did go to Lerone Murphy. He's now undefeated. It's a kind of a quiet 14-0-1, 15-0-1, whatever he is, but Ige's a big name, so hopefully this elevated his status. But how far can he go, Danny Segura? Lerone Murphy at 145 pounds. We talked about all these killers out there, including the great Ilya Topuria. How far can this guy take it?
I still have my questions. And look, I don't want to, criticize the guy too much, because beating a guy like Dan Ige and then before that Edson Barbosa is impressive. And just staying undefeated in MMA in general is extremely impressive. But it's not a guy that I'm completely sold in saying, wow, this guy's going to be a threat to the title, this and that. I want to see more. I think he could probably get to that at some point, but we just got to see more. I'm still not 100% sold on Lerone Murphy, but I'm not discarding him 100% just yet.
He's not taking those big steps that other undefeated fighters have taken at this point. That's kind of what you're saying. Okay, I feel you there. How about Shara Magomedov, Dan Tom? What's his ceiling? That's another guy that everyone's been talking about, and he went out there and had such a devastating KO.
Man, you're gonna have all the Dagestani and Russians coming after me, man, by feeding me all the ones that I'm not the biggest fans of or think are overhyped. Chimaev at least deserves a lot of the hype. And I want to give credit to Shara. He's shown improvements these last two fights, right? But my goodness, we need to stop glazing this guy for goodness sakes. It's just a clear glaze job. It's a clear hype job. The guy's getting a little bit better with his hands, but I'm not. Listen, guys, Johnny Walker hit a similar move. Shout out to Tim Lane, rest in peace, my kickboxing coach. He's the first one that taught this one to me, where it's not really a crazy move. It's actually a sensible way to come out of a spinning sidekick or a spinning back fist, is to counterbalance yourself with another spinning shot. That's what Shara did. It landed. Good for him. I'm still not sold. But we're not going to see him challenged because A, the UFC is going to baby him, and B, this is middleweight. Middleweight is like the island of misfit toys. Shout out to the MMA vivisection. Like seriously, middleweight is where a guy with like neoprene wrapped around his legs, who's in his 50s, Dan Kelly, can go on a win streak. Middleweight is where our champion has no process and continue to go on. Middleweight is where Derek Brunson could just run forward and go on crazy winning streaks. Middleweight is where guys, Andre Muniz fools us all thinking he's going to be the next submission Damian Maia, and then just falls. Middleweight's so weird, man. We never know until they get to the top. Look at as good as Khamzat is, and as much as he deserves the hype, we still don't even know what Khamzat. We're probably not going to know till he gets a title shot. So brace yourselves. If you don't like the Shara glaze, it's coming. Brace yourselves.
Dan Kelly. That was the judoka, right? Dan Kelly. I remember him.
Yeah, I love Dan Kelly, by the way. I'm not trying to but this
that was a good pull. That was a good pull. I remember the Australians had another guy. He's Australian, right?
Yeah. He went.
What was the other guy's name? The hippo. What was the hippo's name? He was cool.
Anthony Petrosyan. Yeah,
too, man. He was a quiet little assassin as well. Good pulls there.
Yeah, Petrosyan.
Shara, man, he looked like a welterweight standing next to Petrosyan. Wow, Petrosyan's a big kid, and he looked like he was handling him, but he pulled that out. I gotta give him his props. That was one of the nicest KOs I've seen in a long time. Quick highlights from 308. Anybody you want to shed a spotlight on real quick before we go to the next subject goes from the rest of the card. What else did you like?
The Orbay and Rebecca fight was insane. Those two just went at it, and I'm with you, George. I was laughing at that doctor. I don't know what he asked him, but I don't even think he said how many fingers. I think he just said, "Do I have fingers?
Do I have fingers?"
How quick that got resolved.
Yeah, because he said something, and the doctor was already halfway out of the cage. So he didn't want that moment. He didn't want that moment, man. Some of those doctors don't want any part of saying, "I think we should call it." He just asked him something quick, and because I don't know how he could see out of the eye, but credit to both of those guys, man. How about you, Danny? Anybody you want to give some love to?
Yeah, Carlos Leal, man. I don't use this word often, but he got robbed. He got robbed on Saturday. I thought he won a 30-27, and maybe you can debate a 29-28, but I thought he took all rounds. He did the most amount of damage, and it was pretty damn clear he was the better fighter, yet somehow he loses unanimous decision on one scorecard, 30-27 to Renat. So, yeah, I mean, he had it tough. He took the fight on short notice, this and that, and yet, he got screwed. He got robbed.
Dan, Tom, all that too.
I want to continue that. Yeah, the people getting screwed, and shout out to that because Danny's absolutely right. That was a terrible decision. In fact, I'm surprised I wasn't on it with my luck, guys, because I was on Max. He gets knocked out for the first time on Petrosyan. He's winning and gets knocked out for the first time on Whitaker. Gets his jaw broken. Little bet on RDA. Gets his knee blown out. Like this is a theme, by the way. If you go back with any of my picks and bets back to 2021, think of a controversial decision. And think of any injuries or any weird ref decisions and go back and see where I was on. It's a fun game where 99% of the time, I was on that other side. So to the point where I don't even want to pick these guys because I'm seeing bad stuff happen to them. And shout out to Dan Ige, who I said last week. Again, look, not a word from Dana. Remember at the end of UFC 303, guys, whatever that kid wants, anything that kid wants, whatever he wants. I want to be on the spear card. No, you can fly around halfway across the world to face an undefeated guy, and you probably won the fight, and Lerone Murphy only won off one elbow and literally one grappling exchange and still arguably lost. It's going to go down like the Josh Emmett fight where it reads unanimous, but Ige arguably won. It's going to get none of that credit, none of that. Half his paycheck, all for what? Making the most gangster walk. Pays to be a company man, doesn't it?
Just ask Jake Hadley.
I did score the fight for Ige, by the way, 29-28.
Yeah, man. All right. Good stuff, fellas.